Justice Initiative is something that I am so incredibly excited for our community and for the various partners that we have. As you know, along with the pandemic that we've been experiencing for close to 1 year now, we declared a state of emergency on March 16th in 2020. There was a heightened level of awareness, outrage, and trauma regarding race relations and policing throughout this country. And as you saw throughout the communities of South Orange and Maplewood, there was definitely a racial reckoning where people demanded more, not just more of each other, but more of government, more of community activists, more of organizations, more and more. And as the village president, along with my colleagues on the board of trustees, we had to start to evaluate how do we go about doing that? There is not a best practices model somewhere in this country where reimagining law enforcement had at the time been at the forefront of something that we could look to and just understand how can we do better. And it was about this time, I would say in the fall or so, maybe a little bit before the fall, that we were having these conversations in our public safety committee and amongst our staff and community members that I stumbled across an article from Dr. Juan Rios from Seton Hall University. And what was interesting here is that we didn't look right away to an academic partner institution and their resources to identify how do we address this issue of policing and race relations and restorative justice, and looking at the calls for service that we have in our community that exceed close to 400 a year that have nothing to do with criminal activities, but rather calls for help. And connecting with Dr. Rios was probably one of the best things South Orange could have possibly done. Here we had somebody, a resource in our backyard, who had extensive knowledge and research looking at policing and race and restorative justice and compassion and caring. So it was that moment that we were able to build a partnership with Seton Hall, and you'll hear more from Dr. Rios tonight and his extensive experience in working in this type of field and addressing these type of issues, and most importantly, extensive passion towards bringing stakeholders together to reimagine things that we typically don't reimagine. And connecting him with Trustee Collier, who chairs our Health and Public Safety Committee, was a match made in heaven. And after we were able to kind of build this partnership with Seton Hall and their division of social work and their social work program, we were able to bring in Essex County as an additional partner. So tonight you're going to learn a little bit about a pilot program, participate in how we want to design this pilot program, what type of outcomes we're looking for. And one of the first questions was, we don't want to just do right by the residents in South Orange. If we are successful in this undertaking, how do we scale it beyond just our local community and start to share some of our best practices and lessons learned with communities around us? So Essex County is going to be a very active participant, both financially and with resources, to join us in this journey as we look towards community care and justice, and what that means, not just from a law enforcement perspective, but also what type of community we want to be, how we want to allocate those resources, what type of partners it takes to get us to a beloved community. So with that said, I would like to introduce somebody who is an additional amazing partner, and that is Bobby Brown. Bobby has been serving as chair of our Community Police Collaborative since its introduction, which was last year as well. Bobby, you with us?
I am. Thank you.
And
Thank you.
Bobby,
Thank
before
you.
we start, I just want to say thank you so much for all the work that you have done for our community. You know, the Community Police Collaborative was designed to address some of these questions we're going to be looking at tonight, and you have been truly a champion for asking hard questions, being a part of solutions, and really activating our residents to get involved. So thank you so much, Bobby, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Colum. I really appreciate those words and appreciate this opportunity to be a part of this special launch. I apologize. I'm a bit informal. Just got off the road. We played in a basketball tournament, and I'm happy to report we won a championship. So Although I'm informal, I am with a smile tonight because of the championship. It is so good to see the CC&J program activating. We see it as a key part of the collaboration with the police department that the CPC is also working towards. And as such, we've tapped two people, Dr. Sarah Wakefield and Brendan Giallo, to liaise inside the program. And, we've shared a ton of input thus far, and we'll be keenly watching the program and its progress going forward. There's a lot of people that have worked on the CC&J program that you'll hear from tonight. So with no further ado, because my voice is gone from yelling at 10-year-olds, but it worked. We got the championship. I'll say good luck with the launch, and hopefully the CC&J and everyone, all the stakeholders, everyone in this community can also celebrate a championship when it comes to the work that we're trying to do here. Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby. Thank you very much. And thank you, Village President Sheena Collum. Very, very excited to get through this program and get it started and kick it off. With that, I would like to ask Dr. Juan Rios to join, and he and I will come onto the screen here. If I can figure out how to, there it goes. Is Dr. Rios with me?
Hey, Don, I'm right here with you. I'm not sure if you can see me.
I can see you. Perfect.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you. Well, so thank you for the introduction and the kind words, both from Village President Collum and from Bobby Brown. What I'd like to do here is go right to introducing Dr. Rios. We've been partnering together on this, gosh, I don't know, for feels like at least a few months, maybe a little bit more, as soon as Sheena tapped you on the shoulder. And Dr. Rios brings amazing energy to this program. He is, I mean, the full package. He is strategy, he is operations, he has an amazing network. You would not believe the team that he has pulled together. It is incredible. And every day we hear about more people that Dr. Rios knows that are wanting to collaborate with us on this program, and the caliber of the talent is absolutely outstanding. So I have dubbed him the Pied Piper. And with that, we're looking to launch this this program together and tell you a little bit about it. But then it's all about your input and your collaboration. Dr. Rios, anything that I forgot?
I think that was more than enough. I appreciate your words and your kindness. Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to be here with you all and really share this initiative that is truly one of those rare moments where, as a researcher and as an academic and as a person who is deeply ingrained into community-based work, where we could try to participate in a research project collaboratively with the community that brings in two important values, care and compassion. And I know many of you are sort of asking, okay, well, let's hear about it already. So let's just really jump in. Donna, if that's all right, let's go right into
let's do it. First slide, we're gonna go to a slide.
Yeah, let's do it.
We're gonna do PowerPoints.
Absolutely. So for the sake of time, I'm going to be as effective, as succinct as possible to try to explain what this program is, as well as allowing enough time and opportunity for questions and answers, as well as opportunity for breakout rooms, which we all know is pretty fun.
Yeah.
So
hey,
CC&J.
Wait, before you get started, sorry. You see these sticky notes up on the screen here. So we would love to hear your thoughts about each of these slides as we go. So, if you want to drop in a note about the mission statement here, you would just drop that into the chat and we'll save all that. And that'll be part of our output from the meeting, and we'll take that back and build it into how we work together. So just a little bit of an explanation around that. And with that, let's go to the mission.
Absolutely. So just to echo what Donna's mentioning here, I think it's super important just to be able to capture what folks are thinking, what are some of their questions, I know sometimes in Zoom platforms, it's really, really tough to keep an engaged audience. So please try to exercise that feature as much as you can. We will appreciate it. So CC&J, Community Care and Justice. What is it? What is our mission here, what we're doing? And essentially, what Community Care and Justice is: a care and compassionate platform in which we seek to engage the entire community of South Orange, all of our members, right, which includes our visitors, our residents, and our neighbors, into all of this, okay? And really designing what we consider to be our wellness journeys, which we're emphasizing here, that we're not just trying to identify specific social problems and say, okay, these are the areas that are issues, but rather take a public health approach into empowering the community in deciding how they are solved, with a particular focus on protecting and then evaluating the most vulnerable members, as well as the youth, which is both one and the same, quite honestly. But we want to take a special emphasis in being able to say, how do we protect our most vulnerable? Nelson Mandela said, you know the soul of a country by how they care for their youth, for their most vulnerable. And that's really the emphasis that we want to take here in this mission.
So I will say this: whenever I share this mission statement with anybody, they go like this. What does that mean? What does it mean we're really going to do?
That's great. So I think that's really powerful, so that we can kind of conceptualize what falls under this umbrella of CC&J, right? So what would it look like when faith-based organizations are able to collaborate with DVRT, a response team? How can we empower those? How can we create more mutual aid amongst our neighbors? What would it look like to have 911 diversion programs? What would it look like in order to increase our activism in our community and create restorative justice practices? I mean, these are just a few of the programs and areas that we can really conceptualize that brings the complexity of CC&J much more deeper and enriched into the community's DNA.
And it really, because I come from a finance background, as I like to say from time to time, these are just ideas. These are not necessarily things we're going to do. We are actively pursuing grant money. We have lots of ideas of good sources, so we want to do as much as we possibly can. But I'll also say that we need to do a needs assessment to figure out what of these things might make sense in our community, and then what can we afford. So, you know, this is a beautiful wish list, but we can't have everything on the list because, you know, we may not even need it, but it just gives you an idea of some of the kinds of things that can come out of a care and compassion program. So with that, I'm going to just give you a little bit of a deeper dive into the program goals. So, let's take it from the top. We really want to serve the entire community first. We want to give the entire community the skills they need through public health outreach to journey their own wellness, just like Dr. Rios shared earlier. And we have particular focus on our youth and others that are in this target population. Those others would be anybody that can benefit from social work and restorative justice. But, you know, in particular, some of our vulnerable populations. So those that experience bias, those that might experience racial inequities, those that have been victims of crime, or are feeling compelled to engage in crime because they're you know, they're in a desperate situation. Those that have been bullied, those that are homeless. You know, is there substance misuse in our village that we need to pay attention to? And what about in-home violence and mental health crisis? These are all hypothesized target population members that we want to find through our needs assessment and determine who we need to get close to and who are the most vulnerable members of our population and the highest priority. I'll go to the next pillar here, which is that we also want to work with the South Orange PD. they've made some phenomenal progress in terms of cultural improvements. They have a continuous improvement mantra in the PD. They have skinnied down we have skinnied down the police department from 57 to now 45 people in the organization chart. And so lots of things have been happening with the PD through the Community Police Collaborative. So lots of improvements already underway, and we want to recognize that they're a part of our community, and we want to give them some of these very same tools that we're talking about that are already existing in our community and that come from the values that we have in our community, and help them to build those deeper into their everyday operational strategies and their day-to-day interactions. And I will say that this pillar has been one that's been a little controversial. Some in the community, and we'll talk about this more, we want to make sure everybody's comfortable with it, but some in our community would really like us to separate a social work pilot from the PD. And we have this idea that they're part of our community, and so it would be difficult to separate them from our program. So we have that pillar there, and we're happy to talk about that some more. And then finally, this last one is where I get all starry-eyed. The reason why it's so great to have Seton Hall and other academics as partners here is that we're gonna roll out this program in a data-driven way. And why is that? It's because if we have data backing up everything we're doing, and we're able to demonstrate whether we're making progress, that means that our programs could be scalable and could move to other communities. And frankly, that's why Essex County is interested in being our partner. They love the idea that what we're piloting and creating here in South Orange might work in Montclair, it might work in Glen Ridge, it could work in a microcosm in Newark, maybe across the border in Ivy Hill. And so the idea that we're partnering with Essex County is tremendous. The idea that we have lots of academic support behind us so that we can get some national recognition of what we're doing and show other smaller municipalities how to get this stuff done is just really, really exciting to me.
Right, absolutely. And Donna, if I could just add one last section to it, I think it's super important that we recognize what sort of the framework is, which is first to create and conduct a needs assessment, which is allowing us to have and utilize data-driven best practices to be able to inform what are the programs and implementation designs that are recommended as a result of the executive summary from the needs assessment. And then being able to use those programs to create a culture that fits what South Orange is essentially living when we say everybody belongs, right? And to be able to continue with those data-driven resources, with our partnerships, with research, so that way we can ensure that the long-term sustainability, the partnerships, and as well as the scalability fits as the community changes over time.
Absolutely. And big emphasis on a big, broad definition of community. People who live here, work here, attend college here, own businesses here. They're visitors, they're patrons, and all our neighbors across our respective borders. This is a bit of an eye chart, but I think it's super, super important. And I just want to kind of lay this all out. We're going to do a lot of chat and we're going to do some breakout rooms. And just, take a look at it. You can kind of take a read of it. But the idea is turn your cameras on if you're comfortable. It's good to see faces. We're about building community here, and putting faces to names is a big part of that. Speak for yourself, your own experiences. You want to share your personal stories. This is what makes this a rich dialogue, and it's what helps us, again, to build community. And don't be afraid to disagree. We are not all of one mind on everything that we're going to talk about tonight. In fact, we all on the team have been working back and forth on a lot of the things we've been talking about. So definitely feel like you can disagree and stay open-minded to hear other people's perspectives and respectful of those perspectives. Make space, take space. You know, if you are one that is really not shy about sharing, hold yourself back every once in a while and ask somebody that seems a little quieter to speak. I love that one. If you are in a group and you want to let one person talk at a time, hold your breath, keep a scratch pad, all those other techniques to let others finish their thoughts. And then when it's your time, you can share yours. This is the next one is something I've built my entire career on. Assume everybody that you're working with has good intentions. They usually do. People with bad intentions are actually pretty rare. And my experience is that we both have a lot of very, very similar values. Keep to 15-second time limits when you're in a breakout round. We'll talk about that quickly later. And I like to put things in a parking lot if you start to get into a pothole. And then we can all get together at some point later and follow up on some of those parking lot pothole items. At this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Dr. Rios and his colleague, Dr. Tina Mashi.
Thanks so much, Donna. One of the most rewarding aspects of this program is being able to partner with colleagues from a transdisciplinary perspective to work together in such a beautifully synchronous way, quite frankly. And I wanted to take a moment here to really acknowledge the mother of caring justice, Dr. Tina Mashi, who has an extensive amount of experience as a researcher, as an academic, as a teacher, professor, and also as an artist, musician. And I believe that's quite important because we can not only think from one brain, but from one aspect of our brains, but being able to also bring our hearts as well as our minds into the work that we're doing. I value you, Tina. Thank you so much. And I give you the floor to explain a little bit about the caring justice philosophy.
Yeah, thank you so much, Juan. And thanks for the opportunity to work with you and our great team, which you've met some of us and they're going to meet a lot more. So,
hey, Dr. Mashi, I'm so sorry. That list of protocol, I want to shout out to the MAPSO Youth Coalition because I totally cribbed that from them. And I forgot to say that. That's all. I wanted to just say that. And then I'm going to go back offline.
good. I'm glad you did that. We want them. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just honored to be a part of the project. And so caring justice as a philosophy, that really came out of my work as a practitioner, working within the criminal justice system. And at the time that the services went from being publicly run to privately run, and I worked in the juvenile and the adult system, and I saw what was happening in communities and what ended up happening within prisons. So the philosophy comes from seeing what's wrong and then turning it into what's right. And that's about putting love and equality back into society and a more balanced perspective. It's a heart-centered philosophy, way of life and being, and it has a compassionate, affirmative life practice component that translates love into, that guides decision-making and actions for the best and highest good of all. And as this slide shows here, it embodies shared values like love, compassion, kindness, and justice in the form of truth, equality, balance, harmony. And those aspects are the two main aspects. And that really draws from both the left and the right brain, in which we're looking at both rational ways of knowing as well as compassionate ways of knowing. But it's all driven by the heart. So we have shared values. We empower each other to live and lead with those values, again, driven by the heart. And we also, part of the framework is identifying and supporting those at risk and experiencing trauma or stress, and really science driving part of it, but also the creativity is also another part that also drives the model, so that we can begin to have this co-creation between the rational masculine and the creative feminine. And we visualize and realize practices that foster well-being consistent with the mission of the model. So we're actually creating into form with this project these ideals that everyone has access to, that happen to just be tapped and emphasized within a caring justice model. And that's only just the top of the surface of it. It gets deeper, but we're going to move on.
Yeah, I know there's so much more that we can discuss about caring justice, and you recently published a book on this, so we're really looking forward also to having that widely read as well. Thank you so much for that work.
Oh, sure.
So Tina, I guess, what does that look like? And let's engage our audience about the question we have here. So really, this is a point where we would like to hear from everyone here about your values.
Okay, so the list of values here, you could check all that apply right here, Ron.
Exactly.
Values such as safety and security. This isn't all the values, but just some examples. Which of these ring true for you? Safety and security, diversity, compassion, harmony, integrity, trust and trustworthiness, prosperity. And then list any other ones, just what's important to you. Doesn't have to make sense, just type it in the box, or other. I guess I don't know if you have another option, but if there's others, you can always put in the chat box. But do these ring true to you? Are there other ones that, oh, look at this.
Oh, wow.
Thank you, that was fast.
It popped up pretty quick, right?
Yeah, where'd it go? It popped down.
There it is.
Oh, there he is, okay.
So it seems like here in South Orange, especially amongst this group, it seems that compassion is what leads here regarding our values. How beautiful is that, huh?
Well, you have to love that. Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
That it is an important component.
And I think it's one thing I want to add to that just really quickly, that trust is also, and trust and diversity were tied. And what does it take to build trust, as well as diversity within our spaces, right?
Mhm.
Of what we mentioned about leaning forward and leaning back.
Yeah, and I would quickly say unconditional love, because that's being able to be oneself and accepting of oneself and accepting of others. And so that component of what you speak is how you act, and that trust in that who you are, authenticity is at the core of that. It's like who you say you are, and what the government says they are, they are. If they say they're into diversity, it's reflected in equality, it's reflected in all that they do.
Absolutely. So this is where we would love to hear from everyone. In the chat box, you can put this in, type in your response. Truly, what are the community values that you cherish? So we gave you some examples. Now let's get engaged into saying what are some of the ones that you cherish most, right? So if anyone wants to be able to either pop it in the chat box or possibly unmute themselves, that's completely fine. Raise your hand.
And you could put it in the comments to all. If you don't want to post to all, you could just privately chat me or Juan if you don't want to say anything public. We got empathy, we've got true equality. I like that. Ooh, honesty. Oh, look at this. Solidarity. It's a good one.
Kristen says, dignity and worth of the person. How powerful is that? Sounds familiar, social work? It's one of our core values in social work practice.
Mm-hmm. Transparency, another good one. And this is all consistent with our caring justice scale. mutual respect. There we go. We've got love coming up. Look at this. Oh, desire to help. Absolutely. We are wired to serve others. And that is actually universal love. Oh, flexibility, Sylvie.
And desire to help moves into action, right? So it's not only, you know, posting something on social media or a lawn sign, you actually call to action.
Absolutely. Yeah. It inspires you. That's the whole thing about the love and the compassion part. And you're going to meet so many inspired people that Juan's brought into the project. You're going to hear about all the projects. They're just amazing. And you're going to see how the love and that turns into inspiration that fuels the actions of people to help others just for the sake of just loving to help others. It's a selfless activity when it comes from a caring justice perspective, not ego. It's not driven by ego. What can I get out of it? It's how can I best serve you? And the process of giving and receiving is such a beautiful circular process between people. And because a lot of the people that we help, as Juan and others you're going to hear from today, and the work that I've done, it's a process of giving and receiving. And that's the whole thing that makes it all flow. Make it in harmony and in balance.
Absolutely, absolutely. I want to highlight that came up a couple of times is grace. Grace and space, allowing us room to be able to grow and stretch and be pulled as well as expand. So
Yes.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yes. Grace is a important one. I'm glad. And radical empathy, sanctuary, good one. Oh, look at this, true listening. We're listening here, Alyssa. We hear you.
Absolutely, absolutely.
All right, this is
That's a great place to be able to. Oh,
I'm actually gonna I'm getting a little teary. So I'm gonna shut this down for now, and feel free to share more as we talk along the rest of the way. And I'm gonna turn us into the next piece of our program. I love it. It's beautiful.
Yes, it is. Thank you so much for having me, Wayne. We'll be back in the breakout rooms.
Thanks.
Awesome. So this allowed me with truly the honor of presenting our next researcher, Dr. Vanessa Garcia from New Jersey City University. She is a phenomenal researcher who's been extensively studying both law enforcement as well as the juvenile justice system. Her background has really been truly inspiring because she's looking at not only law enforcement from one dimension, but also from the different marginalized and oppressed areas, such as women in law enforcement, which is often not spoken of, as well as she is a criminologist, which provides us with a transdisciplinary approach into creating a community needs assessment. Myself, I have a background in social work, Dr. Mashi as well as social work, but our backgrounds are also in sociology, criminology. So it provides a great transdisciplinary way of being able to research and create complexity behind the research and to ensure its reliability and validity. Thank you so much, Dr. Vanessa, for being with us. And can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what are you working on in regards to your current project?
Okay, so thank you very much for those compliments, and thank you for having me on this project. It's been very exciting. To clarify, my degrees are in sociology. Yes, I love sociology, the study of society, how it works structurally, as well as the individual interaction level. But I practice in my research and my teaching criminal justice and criminology. Since the 90s, I've been doing police research. From the 90s until now, I've done, I do more program evaluation and needs assessment of either the police or the community. I've aided the police department in reaccreditation. I've done needs assessment in juvenile justice as well as in policing. So currently, I am working on with another colleague from Seton Hall. So I'm from New Jersey City University Department of Criminal Justice, and I'm working with Dr. Thomas Shea from Seton Hall Police Studies on a police study where we are interviewing police officers to understand their experiences. We're hearing a lot from the public regarding what they are demanding of policing, which we validate in our research of outside of our interviews, but we are not really hearing from police officers, and they are part of the community as well. So one of the things that I am doing and my partner are doing is we are looking at the police end as members of the community, how they feel the CC&J is going to be able to be implemented at the policing end of it. But I've also, because I do evaluation and needs assessment research, I joined the project to aid in the community needs assessment. And so I'm here and lending my support and my research experience.
Absolutely, and we value that. Thank you so much. If we could move to the next question, now we want to really hear from our audience. We started off by discussing our values. We really began talking about what intrinsically we cherish. Now let's think about how can we, there's always room for growth, as was said earlier about grace, right? How do we expand and stretch ourselves in our community? You could ask this question if you like, Dr. Vanessa.
Well, the question is, what have you experienced or observed in our village that is inconsistent with your values? And while I've been speaking to the policing, and this question is not limited to that. So you can discuss issues of policing, absolutely. The police department is always open to know how they can improve themselves, but we can look at all sectors of the village. So you can just drop your thoughts in chat.
Right. So this is a great opportunity for you so we can really hear from you, and your community members can hear from you about what that looks like for you.
Sociology rules. I like that. So, no experiences?
So I see in the chat that there's one area about cooperation, increasing cooperation.
So there's a concern of the homeless living in plain sight. No care for the homeless. And that's definitely something that we are exploring, especially with how the police can aid in that area.
Absolutely. So when we think about embedding empathy, compassion into populations that often we don't have empathy and compassion for because of stigma, because of stereotypes, and being able to deconstruct that, right? Especially within homeless populations, it's a big one that we see that those types of disparities and viewpoints.
So there's also disparities in the school and physical plans that have improved in 23 years. Okay, incidents of racism, neighbors and community members calling the cops on each other.
Another big one, allowing implicit bias, implicit racism to drive our fear, right? So is that a community where we're embodying our values of love, grace, and compassion? It's a great one.
One of the things that we look at in criminal justice is the reality that the police, because they don't cause the crime, they are not the solution to crime. So community efficacy is basically the community's power to help themselves. To, for example, if you think about the neighborhood watch, which of course being careful with it, and it's often under the supervision of the police, but communities need to learn how to handle the solutions that don't need to be criminalized, to call law enforcement, for example, maybe homeless. Do the police need to work with the homeless, or is that a social service, a social worker type of job, or working with mentally ill who a person might be disoriented on the street? Do the police truly need to be involved, or is there a psychological evaluator who can be on the scene to aid the person instead of bringing the police, which kind of brings out the idea of mental illness as criminal, so
Right. And in addition to what you're saying, even at that point, how do we empower the community to make the right call? Because it may not even have to be, we don't need to call 911. There are services that are pre-existing, and just because at this point we are not aware of them, that we tend to immediately go to 911, which does not have to be the case. There are crises that already pre-exist. There are already mutual aid organizations and support that are already existing. Now, how can we get that information into the hands of the public as well? Absolutely. It seems to be also an emphasis of issues surrounding race, inequality, and a lack of compassion when it comes to race and inclusion and racism, and in both in and outside the classroom.
There's also exclusion among business owners, lack of diversity in the government. So yeah, segregation, academic tracks, racism, police abuse of Black and brown youth. So this definitely is a theme here.
Absolutely. And here's a powerful one as well, is this our lack of awareness of larger Essex County community, that the township or the village of South Orange is not Smurf Village. Right? It's not surrounded in this petri dish that's invisible. Those borders don't exist. And our connection to East Orange, Irvington, Newark, Maplewood, that's our community. And believing that, or this sense of community centrism is unhealthy for what I'm seeing.
I like this. Someone mentioned the classism as well. The economic inequalities and the oppressions that people in lower incomes experience. That's often ignored. And that's something somebody mentioned previously in the last chat, intersectionality, which basically refers to a person's their gender, their income, their race, their religion. All of these statuses interact with each other to allow a person to experience things, but also it's what determines their access to resources in society. So all of these are extremely important.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So the calls for service from residents to PD of suspicious persons that reflect implicit and explicit bias. And this speaks to the biases of the public, which there was another mention or two. So it's not just coming from the police, but it's coming from the community. There needs to be more education, more openness, more compassion, more inclusivity.
Right. And general knowledge. I mean, at this stage, what does suspicion look like, really? That's a very subjective assumption that comes from our own implicit biases. And how do we work through that? It's not, simply just calling the police or working with the police. It's working within the community at large to make sure that they're informed that suspicion does not look like a person in the hood. Suspicion looks many different ways and shades and colors. So how do we begin to create, to operationalize that in education from a community-wide perspective?
I want to mention this one comment that Sean Green mentioned about textbooks glossing over racial discrimination in history as footnotes. Oh yes, but this is a national problem where we're just focusing on the US. Each country has its own isms within the textbooks. There's always a mainstream of academia that tends to gloss over, and then researchers such as myself and Dr. Rios and the rest of the researchers on this team, we tend to try to get past that, to look at the realities and not put very diverse groups as a footnote. Unfortunately, however, you're very, very hard pressed to find a textbook, especially at the lower education levels that are inclusive. It's very, very hard.
Absolutely. And we also want to draw the distinction between safety and implicit biases. So we as a community, okay, when there's issues of safety that's happening, it is up to us to be able to address it. And if a person is in psychological distress or mental health distress, it does not equal violence. There are services and appropriate organizations that could address it more effectively than someone showing up with a badge or a gun. So we want to draw that distinction between those two components. What we are not saying here is that there is never a reason to call law enforcement. That's not what we're saying. We're saying, can the community together be more knowledgeable about what other alternatives are there, so we're not depleting law enforcement resources for nonviolent crimes?
Mhm. Yes, someone had wrote something about how do we reconcile not calling the police with a suspicious person with the reality that a man and woman were murdered last summer because no one called. Absolutely. I mean, these are really hard calls, especially after something so horrible as a murder. People are very nervous, and people become a little bit more worried about the people that they are, surrounded with. So that can be a really hard call. I guess the issue is, honestly, and this is what I tell my students: we're all prejudiced. We are members of society, and the society teaches us to recognize that there is difference and that there is value to those differences. We all have prejudices. So I guess it's a hard call. We just need to ask ourselves, are we worried? Are we afraid because this person looks like they're about to do something? Or are we worried because we're traumatized? Neighborhoods become traumatized when such awful, horrible crimes occur. So, it's a matter of, you see a Black man is sitting in the park, are you going to call the police? That would be harassment if you did. But if you see a person peeking through windows or, walking through blocks upon blocks, circling, looking, and I guess I'm thinking about in the sense of how police officers would define suspicion, because police officers are trained to recognize suspicious people, and the everyday person is not trained. So it's a hard call. I guess it's a matter of, just think about the real actions of that person in comparison to your own fears and worries, and try to rationalize that. That's the best we can do.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. So this
I'm
is
gonna jump us out of here. These are also great comments, and I think it's really amazing to pull it into our thought process in terms of what we need to address and how to address it. But I think we're just about out of time for this segment, and so wanted to move us into the next, if that would be okay.
Sounds
yeah,
great.
absolutely. You
Thank
took
you.
the words right out of my mouth.
Sorry.
No worries, no worries. The time goddess is here.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Garcia.
Absolutely. So I would like to next call upon and bring up to the Zoom Li Feng Wang. He's also one of our interns who has been working with us from New York University, and he's going to jump on and kind of discuss the next segment of our town hall, which is going to be surrounded around really breaking out into groups and hearing from one another. So we want to reiterate some of the ground rules as well, about holding space for one another, being mindful of our own sort of ability to lean forward and lean back. And the word grace continues to ring out in my head, to provide grace and space for one another. So Li Feng, if you want to jump in and explain a little bit about our next.
Thank you, Dr. Rios, and hello everyone. Nice to see you all. I'm Li Feng Wan. I'm working with Dr. Rios. I'm one of his interns. So what we are going to do right now is the breakout room, right? So
Yes, sir. We're going to move into breakout rooms. Mhm.
yeah, so we are going to take around 15 to 18 minutes to do the breakout rooms. So during the breakout rooms, we are going to quickly, so first of all, we are going to do the warm up, like quickly share your name and your favorite place of the village. And then we're going to go into the main topic. Basically, it's to describe the features of your ideal community that promote safety, health, and well-being, like for people of all ages. Like that would be take probably 10 minutes. And the last but not the least, we'll be discussing upon how are we going to make those changes happening. Yeah, that's the three main topics.
Absolutely. So now you folks going to be sort of populated into your own groups. We're going to ask someone to be the scribe and just take some of the notes down. So being able to start off, quickly share your name to your group and your place of village, and our moderator as well will give us all a time check on that. And you will also receive these questions in the form of an announcement. So no need to sort of write it down and it'll pop up. It's going to be broadcasted out for everyone. So now that I'm popping in, I'm able to see some of the conversations that were happening. Unfortunately, our conversations weren't able to be transpired to everyone, but it was just such a powerful experience to hear the narratives from the lived experiences from folks in the community. What we see here is that the park is a big one regarding spaces that we truly enjoy and the open spaces. So we want to make sure that that is highlighted, that South Orange has a beautiful, beautiful eco system that currently exists. I also want to very much highlight a few areas in which we could really, truly grow and be greater in South Orange, really about embracing our diversity. You know, Hadi mentioned something very beautiful, which is learning to connect and communicate. Connect and communicate. We've heard in regards to being able to show and demonstrate true equality and moving away from what was once an acceptable term as tolerance, but moving into the sense of honoring our differences and being in a space of true equality. Also being able to reframe our educational system, have full transparency from the township, from the school systems, from organizations, and implementing restorative justice practices. I mean, these are just a few of so many different wonderful perspectives that are values in our community. Aging in place, another great one that we've heard from. And, you know, if at all possible, I would love to hear from one of the group members, if you want to unmute yourself, one of the scribes, and just quickly share what did you come up with, what was some of the findings you had in your group very quickly. You can just unmute yourself and jump in if you feel comfortable.
All right, no one's going, so I'm going to go. It's Elizabeth, and I was in the group with Donna and Alan Noel and Jordan and the woman who lives on South Orange Avenue, whose name I can't remember, and Tina. And
Robin Shearer.
Thank you, Robin. We were focused predominantly on the environmental concerns about our community and making sure that we're aware of the source of our trash and where it goes, and the fact that we are part of the wider community. How do we improve the environment, not only from the trash and keeping the parks clean and improving the trees, but also things like emphasizing bikes and bike trails and walkers and making it easy for people to go more carbon neutral. The environment also included the noise level and how do we help the community understand that not everybody is out drinking at, on Thursday nights at 2 a.m. And that we are just a little bit more respectful of our neighbors and our voice level. I don't know, and I think that was about it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And how important it is to really honor our environment, and climate change is very real. Our footprint and what we leave here on the planet is super important, including how do we invest in our ecosystem, our natural ecosystem, trees, and our quality of life, noise level. But that's all fundamentally what you mentioned there is respect for one another, respect for that we're all not partying on a Thursday night at 3, 4 in the morning, respect for our environment. So I love that. Absolutely love that. Love it. Yeah. So I think this may be, if I'll also continue to feel free to pop it in, any additional conversations that you had. We would love to continue to hear from you in the chat, hear from one another, especially. It's super important. So let's talk about how do we make this happen. So we have lots of ideas. We have lots of areas in which we could improve, and things that we like, really building from our strength. In social work, we call it a strength-based perspective. So let's really circle back to our program, the Community Care and Justice, and what this will look like. Now, here's a possible structure in which we've been hypothesizing would be a result after the data collection and needs assessment would be to be able to, one, work together, obviously with the trustees and our partnerships with Essex and the university, to begin to utilize a space where community members would be able to learn and grow together, as well as collaboratively working together in cohorts to develop community-based solutions that they will want to see, okay? So what would it look like if you envision, if you will, that we had a unified education about restorative practices, right? There were great questions going out there about, well, what is restorative justice? What is it to mean to, have equity and equality? Many of us know these terms, but many of us do not. So how can we in South Orange first create a baseline of education that's open to all members, open to members who are non-uniformed police officers, residents, neighbors, young people, everyone, public servants, right? And create cohorts, faith-based leaders, create cohorts in which they're working together and being able to say, identify an opportunity of improvement, like, for example, the environment, or restorative justice, or mental health, and addressing those solutions and working together with the municipality and ensuring that it happens. How beautiful would that be as an outcome? Absolutely. So let's move on to the next slide. Now let's talk a bit about timeframes. So at this point, as I mentioned earlier, we have steps. And the first step is to create an adequate framework and assessment, okay? Partnering transdisciplinarily to ensure that the study and the needs assessment is rigorous enough to capture the community needs, the community's values, the community's awareness of resources, et cetera. So it's super important as we move forward that once the survey comes out, that it may be a little lengthy, but it's meant to be in order to try to capture as much as possible. And we're currently in the phase quarter 1, quarter 2, where we're speaking to stakeholders, we're speaking to community members, we're gathering data and information, and trying to recognize and understand the culture in order to effectively implement the questions that will capture the community needs, as well as where some of the gaps that are happening here, which is why today was so important. It's helping us also frame what are we also missing in the survey so we can include it, okay? And then we're going to move into designing the programs after the assessment, after the executive summary, after the analysis that we'll present to the township and to the village as a whole. And this will provide us recommendations regarding the data for driving community-based, community-driven solutions. And after, to be able to continue to assess and replicate. So what would it look like if we continue this model and we are successful in South Orange to continue to work with our neighbors, to continue to expand that out so that this work that's happening in South Orange and building culture of care, compassion, justice, interwoven in its DNA into the fabric of the community can spread out and continue that way by continually to assess and scale what this looks like to respective communities. And that's the long-term partnerships with universities, as not only in a research component, but resources. We've discussed how Seton Hall historically may have been viewed as sort of the kingdom within its gates. We want to break down those gates. We want to be able to move forward and create relationships with the new strategic plan of the university, that Seton Hall and South Orange, there is no distinction. Seton Hall is a part of the South Orange community, and we have to do better about cultivating that relationship. Therefore, I am asking all of you to, if you're interested in volunteering, to help get the word out about these surveys, especially to our community most vulnerable, please continue to reach out to us. We have a landing page where you can pop in your name and say, hey, I'm really interested in volunteering and seeing how I can really be a part of this initiative. Fantastic. If you get an email about a survey, please spread the word. The more we capture, the better. And the more diversity we capture, the better, okay? We want to make sure we're not excluding voices and to be able to push that forward. So with that said, there's so much gratitude and honor for allowing myself, and then I can speak on behalf of the entire team, to be a part of such a powerful initiative. And I'm going to turn it over back to Donna here. And just want to sincerely, if there's any questions, to please visit our landing page. We look forward to engaging in conversations and moving forward from there.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rios. That was amazing. I had a lot of fun. I hope everybody else did. I hope you get a real sense for how powerful this program is. I mean, I started talking about it with the CPC, I don't know, a few months ago maybe, and I just barely understood it, and I feel like I'm still sort of at the tippy top of that iceberg, but there is so much here, and it feels so good to be a part of it. And so when you think about whether you want to volunteer or somehow get involved, I just want to leave you with that thought. Dr. Rios is amazing. He's put together an amazing team. And I really feel like my life is different just being on this team. And so I would just try to inspire you to join us and volunteer in that way for that reason. And I hope to see you all, as we talk more about this program going forward. Thank you. Thank you for your participation, and thank you for your interest.
Thank you, guys.